Hello, hi, hello, hello, hi. This is FSP Live, Fridays at 4 Eastern, through July. I'm the Amelia one. My pronouns are she, they. Robyn is our mod in the chat, and we are here to answer questions, sing songs, and talk about stress and murderbot. And I missed last week. Sorry, I tried to make a thing that would let people know, but I had what I thought was a migraine, turned out to be a sinus infection. I have since taken a Z pack, and I am good. The miracle of modern medicine. Um, Robyn, I have changed the rules in chat. I kind of did it by accident. I hit go live and I had set the chat to anyone instead of subscribers with a 5-minute delay. I don't think it'll change much. I think it'll be fine, but let me know if it becomes a problem. Thanks, Robyn. How was the conference last week? I know you were away while I was asleep. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. That's fantastic. Hi, Amanda Gill. Glad you're here. So there's 2 episodes of Murderbot to talk about this week because I didn't talk about last week's, and I sold out of decks on the second day. Oh, that's amazing because that means that you were very, very successful, and I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, so Emily says that bad writing on a TV show is writing that cannot be redeemed by a performance. And so I don't think that the writing in Murderbot is bad because the performances are magnificent. Alexander Skarsgård is doing an amazing job, and I am so relieved and impressed that, like, he's not just being heroic white guy. He's really doing the thing. It was so I'm glad. And also, shout out to John Cho as the captain in Sanctuary Moon, who is just committing so hard. It's very entertaining to watch him. And the thing that makes the whole show really worth watching is Noma Dumezweni, who is perfection. She's perfection. And when they cast her, and I saw the casting announcement that Noma Dumezweni is going to be Mensa, I was like, oh, that's perfect. I didn't even know how perfect it was gonna be. It's so perfect. She's made of magic, and everything about her is perfection. But, like, I gotta get it out of the way so that I don't dwell on it later, that, like, some stupid, bad writing choices are like, there's no way Lee Beebe, who those of us who've read the book know, like, she's a great Chris agent. There's no way that Murderbot would have let her go at face would have accepted her at face value. He would have immediately been like, "She's gotta go. We gotta question her. We gotta find out what is actually going on." And I know they were in the middle of, like, this big dramatic feelingsy reveal that he's rogue and everything, and, like, she left for that, but, like, there's no way that he would have let that distract him, and that just was very unrealistic and out of character for Murderbot and not and then lazy writing, I think, so that they could get Murderbot away so that Lee Beebe could take over the hub. That was bad. And, like, why didn't this team get her story out of her first thing? That should have been a priority. And when she, like, tries to kiss Murderbot, he should have told her, "Don't touch, don't touch," like he does with Mensa. He should have said, "Don't touch." That Why did he not do that? His performance reliability goes down, but, like, he doesn't respond with any kind of, like, recoil or stepping away. He just lets her do it, and that is completely out of character for Murderbot. That's nothing like what Murderbot would do, and that's bad writing. I'm sorry. Um, Lee Beebe pulls a gun, and Bharadwaj is like, "What's that?" Bharadwaj doesn't know what a gun is? When they explicitly said that they all had weapons training? And at the end of the last episode, Lee Beebe has been, like, objectifying Murderbot this whole time. But even so, when she sees Murderbot come in at the end of the show and he says, "Drop your weapon," she would have been terrified. Like, the whole point is that sec units are terrifying. Sec units are terrifying. And it comes in, helmet on, armor on, voice with the modulated thing, drop your weapon, and it becomes a hero all of a sudden and, like, make a move and no! Lee Beebe is from the corporate rim. She had been conditioned her whole life to fear murder bots. Therefore, she would be terrified. There's no way she wouldn't be terrified in that moment seeing Murderbot step in, because it's not his cute, adorable face that she sees. It's helmet, mask, armor. She would have been terrified. That was wrong and bad and t- 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 so now that that's all out of the way, I don't have to I don't have to worry about you know, not complaining about things, and I can say that there are good things to talk about, which is the payoff, I guess, of Mensa's panic attacks is like now the panic attack is like a set piece for this like bonding moment. I guess that's a payoff. I don't think it was worth it. I still think giving her panic attacks, like having clinical panic attacks, is wrong for her as a person, as a leader. That she should be medicated for it. Like, I, you need to, Christine. We're going to talk about Murderbot. And first, I'm going to complain about the things that are in the show, but then I'm going to talk about the actual relatable things. But I got to get this stuff off my chest. Sorry. I got to get through it. Otherwise, it's going to be in me and I'll just complain about it surreptitiously the whole way. Here's a good thing is that in the previous episode, before they're about to crash, Mensa's talking about her kids to Murderbot, about how proud she is. And they've mentioned her kids several times. And in the moment when Murderbot is trying to like move Mensa through this panic attack, um, when Mensa not watches Sanctuary Moon, which isn't really helping her. She's kind of like trying to let it do the thing, but she hears Murderbot speaking along, and she turns to him, and the look in her face of like that indulgent compassion, that's like a very maternal look that I think they set up well by like focusing on her motherhood. And so I think in that moment, her motherhood, and I think that was set up in the writing, but it was sold by the performance because once again, Noma Dumaswani is perfection. Please give her an Emmy. Um, and uh, I guess it's kind of good that they created this parallel between the episode. Okay, so here's a thing that is good, that is very autistic-like, and as an autistic person who loved the Murderbot books before the show and is only excited about the show because of the books, um, I really like the fact that they're showing Sanctuary Moon and that they're showing the scenes that he's quoting because I have done that. Emily and I have communicated at times just in quotes from Broadway musicals. Just to this day, answers to questions come in lines of shows. Nice is different than good. I'm not good. I'm not bad. I'm just right. Into the Woods, pivotal, like very quotable quotes of like how to be in the world. And I have consciously, before I knew I was autistic, have consciously taken note of what people say in books and shows to think, I'm going to use that. That's a thing to say. I'm going to memorize that and remember it to say in public so that I have said a thing that um, is a thing that a person would say. I did not then have such discernment about good writing. Although I have to say the problems with the writing in the show are not in individual sentences so much as they are in just like setting up story. Um, Amanda, oddly, in my house, we do that with SpongeBob lines. Everything is about, I mean, everyone, and the meme of SpongeBob, the like 4 hours later or however much time later. That meme-ish, I meant meme-ish, um, uh, memishness of like rememberable, quotable quotes. Um, yeah, the whole world does that, thank goodness, because then we have this shorthand that we can use to communicate. But like, yeah, especially if you share a show in common where you can find those quotable quotes. I find that so hard relatable, and the fact that this series started with Murderbot, um, I mean, the whole thing that started off, Garathan being suspicious is Murderbot acting like the captain, um, on Sanctuary Moon, acting like Sanctuary Moon and giving quotes from that story and, like, yeah. So, I think that that's really relatable and real, and, uh, and I like it a lot. Uh, so when it comes to, like, autistic representation, that is a thing that is good. The lack of eye contact thing is sustained well throughout the show. I've been so glad to see that. In the first 3 episodes, it was, like, kind of awkward and inconsistent about how much eye contact Murderbot is giving and how he feels about it, and, like, 3 episodes ago, he makes eye contact with Mensa and says out loud, "I hate eye contact." Like, that's bad writing. That's bad writing. No one would do that, and Murderbot would not do that. Um, but, uh, he, uh he would just not make the eye contact, like, or he would accidentally make it and then, like, look away again. And there are moments where he just, like, flicks to make eye contact and looks away again, and it's, again, Alexander Skarsgård actually being, like, good at maintaining this consistency of representing this character this way that autistic people like me are finding relatable in Murderbot and always have. Um, so the eye contact and the quoting of the quotable quotes, in order to to communicate. Um, the third thing to talk about with the autism is it's too early for me to talk about. I'll probably talk about it a lot next week. Emily and I just recorded an episode. The next FSP episode is gonna be about unmasking. Um, she read Unmasking Autism, and I read Unmasking for Life by Devin Price. So we talk about unmasking. And in particular, the thing that's coming up on the show now is now they know that Murderbot is rogue. Now they know that it is not being controlled by a governor module, but is making its own choices about how to behave. Um, and so it is basically a story now of unmasking. To what degree does it get to see, okay, this is another thing that we're going to talk about is shadow, and I'll explain that when we talk about it. I'll explain that when we talk about it. It's in the future. Emily's doing a thing, and that's when we're gonna talk about shadow. And in the show, in terms of like a Jungian definition of shadow and how to analyze a thing, in Jungian dream analysis terms, which is a way that I like to think about art, they're setting up Garathan as uh, Murderbot's shadow. At first, I thought maybe he's like the inner critic, like the mad woman in Murderbot's attic, but I think it's shadow, kind of because of the explicit violence against Garathan, um, and the lack of acceptance. And Garathan's not so much mean as just doesn't give. Yeah, no, I'll talk about it later. I'll talk about it later. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, the thing I was talking about is that it's what was I talking about? I'll go back to questions, and I'm sure it'll come back to me. I got distracted, communicating in memes and oh, I communicated memes and gifs so much. Sometimes it's hard that my therapist does not live online because she doesn't know all my references. Yeah, Emily and I also text back and forth in gifs, and it is so like now we can just say like Yoda nod gif instead of having to like go search for it or David Rose shrug or whatever. Yeah. Does he feel authentically autistic? A few neurotypical actors can act autistic accurately since they fundamentally don't get masking. Yeah. Um, the thing about it is that Murderbot is a Murderbot. Murderbot is a human and bot construct that is not human. So it isn't a matter of realistic autism representation so much as like the very exaggerated characteristics that a lot of autistic people relate to, such as the desire for alone time, the feeling of being an alien among a group of humans, the discomfort with everything that humans take for granted in terms of social interaction. And I mean, of the characters who act humany womany autistic, Garathan is the most like that. Garathan sort of conforms to stereotypes about an autistic character. You know, the skinny, awkward white guy who's kind of like nerdy. Um, and Garathan is an augmented human, so he's got like s- electronic augments in him that make him able to like interact with like the feed is what they call it. It's like the internet and the Wi-Fi and the he can directly like his device that makes him interact is built into him. Um uh and he is the awkward one, and Baradwaj, who is the most maternal, nurturing, except for Mensa, of course. Baradwaj is the one who like kind of relates to um Garathan in the kind of like caring way, and she says, and we've talked about showing compassion, and he's the one who seems like kind of robotic. Everyone else on the team accepts Garathan completely. They like him, they support him, they interact with him on his own terms, and it's like the ideal way that we would want to think that like humans would interact with another autistic human. um, and it's just that Murderbot is not human. Um, and so yeah, I think Alexander Skarsgård is doing a good job being how I would want to be. Like I'm not a human construct. David Dest Melchian plays Garoth and is cast in those types of roles constantly. Yeah, when I watched this with my stepson, um, he was like, "Who's that guy with the angular face?" And looked him up, and he was on a bunch of shows that I had never seen before, but my stepson had seen, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, he plays this same character." So, I mean, like, in terms of our, like, visual expectations of a person, I'm sure he's a super cool guy as an actor in real life. Like, most actors are, you know, kinda zany. Um, not all. Anyway, I'm sure he's a super cool guy, but, like, I can see how, like, he would get typecast as this kind of like droopy introvert because of his face and stuff. Whereas Alexander Skarsgård would never get cast as someone like that just because of how we assume things about what people are like based on how they appear, because people judge based on appearances, and it takes us time to adjust to the idea that someone as conventionally conforming to the socially constructed ideal as Alexander Skarsgård would not, in fact, conform to the ideal that we think of as a personality ideal, someone who is outgoing and vivacious and whatever, whatever. So, what I'm saying is, yeah, he does a good job. He does a really good job. So that when I watch, and of course, rewatch, um, the more detail I notice in Murderbot, the more I am like, yes, that's well thought through. The choices Alexander Skarsgård is making feel right. Feel like Murderbot's personality. That's my dog. Can you hear? Bark, 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 bark. Yeah. So I also want to talk about thing two that I think we need to address about Murderbot are um, the agender situation, because they bring in Lee Beebe, who is not in the books, but there's a Gray Chris. So Gray Chris is the name of the company, who are the ones behind the spoiler alert, like whatever. They're Gray Chris is this company that's behind the problems that the Prezox team are facing. And Lee Beebe kind of like is the TV show's version of interacting with them. Um, and she objectifies and sexualizes Murderbot in a way that none of the other team did. And as Bharadwaj so patiently explains to Lee Beebe, where we come from, we don't talk about constructs that way. We'd no sooner put a penis on an unwilling sec unit than, and words fail her to create a thing, which again I think is lazy writing. I think like if they'd worked, they could have come up with like a thing to compare that to, and that might have like helped to understand why what Lee Beebe is doing is gross and inappropriate. Um, and they've shown a lot of Murderbot's body and been very explicit about the fact that Murderbot has no hair, Murderbot has no genitals, Murderbot has no nipples. Like this is a plain non-human body. In addition to like now we've seen some insides too, so like super not human. Um, And the way Lee Beebe, like the first thing she does is talk about Murderbot in this like sexualized, objectified way. And it's played for laughs, I guess. None of the characters laugh, but like, was the audience supposed to laugh? I didn't understand that moment. And I didn't understand why they set it up where she was. I don't understand why they did that. Why did they do that? Did they want a reason for her not to be afraid of Murderbot when it comes in and explodes her head? Why did they do that? Anyway, so being agender and feeling like your body has nothing to do. Murderbot is in the enviable position of not having explicit primary sex characteristics. Murderbot has secondary sexual characteristics like um, the shape of its body is that like, triangle Dorito masculine shape. Um, but that's like all superficial stuff. So Murderbot has evidence that it is not male. And being agender and not having any evidence visually is uncomfortable. Is less is I'm sort of envious of Murderbot in that way. Robyn, I feel like writers sometimes are like, well, who wouldn't sexualize this character? Which is just kind of telling on themselves. Like completely, Robyn. I agree. Uh, yeah, that's the writers being like, we've got Alexander Skarsgård here. Of course, everyone is drooling over him. Um, but like, no, that's and in no way does the rest of the team do that. So like, I guess they had to have somebody do it. Christine, instead of the fact that in the society they don't treat bots that way. Would we have known that otherwise? Okay, all right, that's a good point. Is to be explicit. I mean, like because before Lee Beebe, this character came in and objectified Murderbot. We just saw the rest of the team interacting with Murderbot, not objectifying it. And let me tell you a story about the time I went to see the Ghostbusters movie, the remake with all women Ghostbusters. I got halfway through that movie and discovered they're not going to do they're not going to do the tropes. They're not going to do the fat one's the funny one and there's the hot one who gets the guy and they're not going to do any of that. And I literally cried because they were not doing the tropes. And I could feel the absence of those stereotypes. It hit me, that void. And I was so, I mean, it's not the best movie ever. It's got flaws, but it's silly and fun. And it meant a lot to me that there was a movie that didn't follow this formula. Like, it's not gonna do the thing, and I was so happy and relieved. So, I observed the way the team treats Murderbot, and I noticed they're not objectifying it. They're not imposing gender on it. They're not sexualizing it. Um, but yeah, I guess you're right, Christine. That's a good point. That like maybe the writers wanted to make sure explicitly that the audience knows, just in case they hadn't noticed, that the Prezox team has not done that, and that they are not going to do that. And they kind of play with that this episode too. So in this episode, Christine, you haven't seen it, but Murderbot watches this show called Sanctuary Moon, and we get like excerpts of the show Sanctuary Moon within the show Murderbot, and there's often like a parallel between what's happening in both shows. So like this time it begins with like this is the episode where the romance between the captain and the navigation bot really kicks off, and it's the captain and this bot are stranded on a planet, and they're they're gonna have to spend the night together on this planet, and they have a seat by the fire, and it's this conversation of the two of them alone, and we know that it ends up leading to them hooking up. Not that that's shown explicitly, but we know that from how it's been treated previously in the series. And then later on in this episode, Murderbot and Mensa, who is the leader, basically the captain, are in that same position. They're stranded, isolated, and alone, and they're sitting down together. And so they very very heavy handedly draw this parallel. And maybe that's like an attempt at good writing, but like it was so clunky. um, I didn't love it, but but I got it. I see what you did there. Um, and it goes very differently. Thank God. I did have like a little bit of like, oh no, irk, when I saw that they were drawing this parallel, and like the Murderbot is telling Mensa to sit down just the way that the captain had told the navigation bot to sit down. And I was like, no, no, please, no, please, no. And then instead it ends up being like they just sit next to each other. And it doesn't even end up being like it ends up really good, actually. It ends up really good, actually. And as much as I've complained about like the ways that the storytelling is contrived and implausible, um, uh, this moment is nice. They watch a bit of a show together, and and Murderbot thinks that this is gonna help Mensa, but it's not the show that helps Mensa. It's seeing Murderbot be, like, excited about his thing, and she, like, learned something about him and, like, is excited to be like, "Oh, this person, him." I keep calling Murderbot him because it's Alexander Skarsgård, and my brain automatically defaults to the pronouns of the thing of the person that I see instead of the character. When I talk about Murderbot in the books and I think of Kevin R. Free's voice, I have much less. I never think of Murderbot as he. I always think of Murderbot as it. When I'm thinking about the stories in the books, when I'm thinking about what it looks like in the show, I keep using he. It's challenging. Um, Anyway, yeah, so it works out really well. The point was that they drew this parallel between these 2, between the show that Murderbot watches and what actually goes on the show that we're watching, um, and that they created a parallel moment where the original one was a romantic one, and this one turned into, like, kind of a maternal one, kind of a familial, friendly, uh, one, and it was a moment of connection, and you could really see it especially for Mensa, especially because Nama Dumezweni is made of magic. She is perfection. Mensa is perfection. I knew the casting was good, but oh my god, she is so good. Everything about it is perfection, and I love it. Anyway, um, yeah, so that, like, tender moment of connection that is, not romantic. They made that parallel. So they did, like, explicitly show, "This is not what that is. This is not romantic. We are not objectifying. This is just about people as people who are not connected just because of, romantic or sexual or whatever." And as an agender person, I am glad, and I can feel explicitly that they are making that happen. And I guess you're right, Christine, like, they had to show somebody acting differently in order to make sure that the whole audience noticed that the Prezox team is not doing that. Christine, you should watch this show. It's good. Or you can read the books or listen to the audiobooks. Kevin R. Free is the audiobook narrator. Okay. The absence of tropes is fantastic. Sometimes the world building has to be super explicit because the audience comes in with their with our yeah, exactly. Their yeah. Amanda, the absence of trope is fantastic. Christine, Ghostbusters movie definitely took the buddy comedy aspect from the original and applied it to women and didn't use a male lens to explain it. I love that about it. The world building is hard because oftentimes it requires being explicit to the point that you feel so ridiculous and over the top. But if you're subtle about it, people miss it. See, that's why I think that Murderbot is mediocre writing and not bad writing. Like, Severance is good writing because you don't need to be explicit. Like, they trust the audience. They can have a mystery and, like, let there be an iceberg and not spell out everything underneath it. And, like, Brandon Sanderson is great at world building. I mean, he specializes in it, right? In, like, creating magic systems that are made of, like, principles that underlie a whole culture. And somehow it never comes across as heavy-handed or awkward, and I can't make that happen. I'm not a good writer. I wrote a book with Emily, but honestly, all the goodness about the writing came from Emily. Like, I help with content and shaping, like, pedagogical outline things and making things make sense. But when it comes to, like, writing a sentence that makes you go, "Yeah, that's Emily." Every sentence that makes you go, "Yeah," in Burnout, Emily wrote, or at least Emily finished. My watch, this is so unreal long. Yeah, I completely understand. Yeah, I know. Hey, let me tell you a show that you don't have to put on your list. Your Friends and Neighbors is also an Apple TV show with John Hamm that I wanted to watch because I enjoy John Hamm. That show is badly written. It is bad writing, according to Emily's definition, which is even a good performance can't save it. It is so bad and so badly written that even John Hamm can't make it feel natural and real and like it didn't come out of the blue. World building in novels is different because you can explain with the characters. Absolutely. On TV, you need to show it more than put it in dialogue. That makes it hard. I can't disagree. I can't disagree. And I can't argue against you because I've never done it. I don't know how to do it. Um, and I am glad that they are at least making the point that Murderbot's agenderness, lack of gender, is significant to his identity. Because, like Severance, Murderbot is about having two identities and eventually kind of growing into a second one in ways that you would not have expected you'd be able to, or have permission to, or have an opportunity to. Um, and after Emily and I, next week, we'll talk a lot about that because we're going to talk about the we're going to talk about unmasking and the risks of unmasking, the risks of transgressing and just being different from regular people, the cost and the challenge. Um, and they're setting up they're setting it up in Murderbot. They're setting it up so that its difference, its uniqueness, its special requirements for how to interact with other people are being respected, like, for the first time in its existence. And, they're really setting up Murderbot's admiration of Mensa, Murderbot's recognition of her competence. Like, for the first time, Murderbot feels like he can rely on another it can rely on another person, feels like, it can trust another person, and be protected by another person, and that's the thing in Murderbot. That's the thing in the first book, is that Murderbot realizes, "Oh, there's there's this" yeah, and they're setting up that very well, I think, um, and they're setting up, um consequences for unmasking that I'm excited to talk about. Amanda, I don't know if anyone else watched Extant, but the writing was terrible. Oscar-winning Halle Berry, it was awful. You know, good actors doing bad stuff. Actors work. Actors wanna work. And, I, for one, would prefer to hear so as a musician, I'd prefer to hear a virtuosic performance of mediocre music than to hear a mediocre performance of virtuosic music, right? I don't wanna hear a middle schooler play Mozart. Uh, that is difficult. I'd much rather hear someone who is an expert perform music that is meh, because the performance makes it human, makes it rich. Of course, the ideal is content, a score or a script that is wonderful, and a performance that is wonderful. That's the ideal. But if I had to choose between, high quality performance or high quality content, I'd choose the performance every time. So in that way, Murderbot is very satisfying to me. Murderbot the show is very satisfying to me because it is magnificent performances for the most part of meh writing. Um, and the performances really make up for it. Manigail, yeah, you agree with me? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Robyn, I think I appreciate that Murderbot's non-human distinctness and how that manifests as agender and therefore asexual. Agender and therefore asexual. It's different than the trope of making an autistic character asexual by default. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, it's its biology and its identity. It is built and designed not to have gender or sexuality. Like there's just no sexuality in its programming. Um, which is like I'm kind of envious of that thing. Like that's kind of like a that'd be great. Not the asexuality. I'm not asexual. No. Um, I'm like more like pansexual. But I'm married to a dude, so it like totally doesn't matter. I'm just my sexuality is married to that guy. Um, but being agender and having like evidence to be like, look, no gender, that would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah. I don't think that the agender I don't think it is asexual therefore or agender therefore asexual. I think it's agender in its build and asexual in its programming, so I think it's a hardware versus software issue. I'm not sure it's a therefore. I think it's, connected programming to hardware thing. Christine, note to self, have tissues ready for next week's um, yeah, we both cried. It's true. Talking about unmasking, it's hard. It's hard. And I it's hard. Yeah, for sure. There's crying in next week's episode. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Robyn, fair point. I think it meant it's all wrapped up in a bot thing. Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. The hardware versus software. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I knew what you meant. I was just trying to like parse it out because I want to like talk about the parallel specifically between Murderbot and one of the reasons one of the reasons I'm here talking about Murderbot is like one of the things that I find appealing in Murderbot's character is that it is agender. And like I've never really read an agender character before, and I find it appealing and entertaining and relatable. Um, I don't identify with its pronouns. I feel like that is very much about inanimate objects, and I definitely don't feel like an inanimate object. So I like the idea of they them, and because I'm aware that when people look at me, I have no evidence to say agender, that people's brains are gonna instantaneously go to she, and I know that, and I know that it's not a matter of, like, you know, I know that it's not what they want to categorize. They just see it, and their brains just do it, and I get it, and, like, I don't care so much that it's gonna harm me or make me feel, you know, like, "Oh, that's not who I am." I mean, I do feel like that's not who I am, but it's fine. I get it. It's fine. I don't care that much that people call me, so that's why I use she, they. Um, but I think it's for murderbot makes sense. It's not inanimate, but it definitely views itself as, like, machine. And only gradually through the rest of the books does it start to view itself less as machine and more as person, and that's one of the most compelling parts of that story, is Murderbot's own acceptance of itself, not as machine, but as person. It's a good story. I'm really glad they're making this series, and I hope that they make another season and that in the next season, it's parallel stories between what Murderbot goes and does next, and so in the books, what happens is it's all 100% from Murderbot's point of view, and he sees, like, news feed of what Mensa is doing and what's happening to her. I hope that in the season they make next, that they make a season 2 and that it's 2 parallel stories of, like, equal parts what Murderbot goes and does and what Mensa goes through, because I wanna see more Mensa. I wanna see Nama Dumezweni on my TV screen every week for the rest of my life. She's amazing. I wanna see everything she's ever done. Uh, just see the podcast. "Oh, during COVID, I'm glad it's back." Oh, thanks, Anna. That's really nice to hear. It helps me. Yeah, a feeling to the word of transcendence. Yes. Transcendence is so awkward to talk about, but it feels so because we try to stay so grounded in science. We in no way wanted Burnout to be a woo-woo book about feelings because that would not have been compelling or useful or believable to me when I was 21. When I was 21 and I needed this book and I needed to know, why is everything so hard all the time? Why do I feel such resistance between the world and myself? I would only have believed a book with as many citations as we have. So we did not want to be writing a book about woo-woo feelings and whiffy spiritual ideas or like our own individual experiences with no broader data to support that our experience is even close to universal. We wanted everything in the book to be evidence-based. Fortunately, there is research about transcendence. There's philosophy and psychology and neurological research, neurology. That's the word. And there is neurology that supports that transcendence is a state and the experience of it is a real thing. It's not an imagination. Like the idea that feelings are not imaginary. Feelings are, you know, cycles that happen in your body with a beginning, a middle, and an end, um, with measurable, observable changes. That was that was really important for us to focus on in the book. And we only just touch on transcendence as the magic trick in like chapter 8, I think. Um, and we have both learned more about it since the book came out, which is why we wanted to make an additional episode about it, especially because Emily has started practicing transcendental meditation. And it's been a long time since I was in front of a choir of my own, but I definitely miss it. And I can feel the difference in myself not having access to it on the regular. Um, but, my health is improving. So hopefully someday I'll get access to it again. But um, yeah, it's an evidence based thing that makes a difference in how people feel about their place in the world, and is one of those tools you can use for being stronger than the fire. Christine, I'll be crying with you, sending another pod episodes to my therapist. Yeah, yeah. If you haven't read Devin Price's newest book, which is Unmasking for Life, I read it and it's good. It's somewhat practical. Well, we did a whole episode about it, but if you haven't read it and you listen to the episode and you're like, I want to dig more into that and I want to kind of like wallow in this information and see what it feels like. Devin Price has a very different voice than mine. When I talk about it, I'm talking about it from my me. And Devin Price's voice and freedom with language is different than mine. Um, and if you're interested in it, it's worth, more than just my book report on it if you're interested. So I'm very much looking forward to next week and seeing the consequences of Murderbot's unmasking. And then further into the future, examining the ways that the show represents all of the parts of Murderbot, philosophically and psychologically. Like, I think Garathan is Murderbot's shadow, and of course Mensa is the part of him that is wise. And talking about the different Jungian archetypes, we're going to talk about that in the next few weeks, and I'm looking forward to it. So for now, it's been lovely to be a person in the world with you again, and thanks for coming by. And I'll talk to you next week. Till then, bye. Bye. Thanks. Thanks. Bye. Hold on. Where's my button? Bye. Bye. Bye.